Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Jain Irrigation Training Series. I'm Richard Restuccia, Vice President of Water Management Solutions for Jain, and we're here today to talk about telemetry for water management. And, I look at this subject and I think it's almost a, telemetry or water management 102 or a more advanced type subject. But what I feel like also is that when people finally understand or when people recognize the importance of telemetry, what telemetry to use in order to have their irrigation systems work properly, it's actually quite easy. A lot of it is in the terminology and learning the terminology. And once you get that terminology down, boy, all the rest of the pieces fall into place. And so I'm really excited today because we have Cunningham leading us through this journey of telemetry. So today we're going to learn about how to design telemetry for your ranch, break down the difference between radios and gateways and nodes and all these things that tend to confuse me when I'm thinking about automation for water management. So Connor has been with Jain now for a while. He was born and raised in the Central Valley. He's got a biology degree from Fresno State, and he's been working in this ag tech sector now for about 5 years in the Central Valley. He's been really helpful to a lot of growers. And if you haven't met him, you should take the time to meet Connor, because one thing that I really appreciate about Connor is I know working with him, he really cares about customers. He cares about doing a job right, and I trust him to do the right thing for our customers. And it doesn't get much better than that. So anyway, welcome, Connor. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I meant every one of them. So
Oh, thank you.
listen, you've got the tough job today of taking us through telemetry for water management. Is this something that you find many of your customers struggle with initially?
Yeah, definitely. And when I'm calling around trying to talk to various growers in different regions, it's kind of a consistent theme as I'm talking to various growers in all different walks of life, sizes, crop types. This seems to be a bit of a mystery to some people, I would say. So, that's really what we're trying to do today. I think you did a really good job of setting up, saying, we're gonna break this down a little bit more. Let's think about, what are some of the terms that we're hearing when we're talking about this type of ag tech in this space, and then let's start thinking about, what does it actually look like putting it on the farm. So
Yeah.
that's my goal today, is to try to break it down even further and let's have a real productive conversation.
Yeah, goals are great, and that's a great goal. And man, if I can come away knowing the difference between a gateway and a node, I'm going to be happy. So,
Well, great. That's where we're going to start.
all right, good.
Awesome. So yeah, let's first dive into some terminology, and then we'll start looking at the benefits of different aspects of the technology, and then we'll start moving into a planning phase. So let me go ahead and advance my slide here. There we go. Perfect. So, you started bringing up the topic of telemetry, and when I first heard the term telemetry, I was thinking to myself, man, what the heck does that mean? And that's usually the response I get to a lot of people. So I actually personally don't use it a lot when I'm talking to people. But for the discussion today, telemetry is a telemetry device is a unit that wirelessly transmits data from sensors or devices up into the cloud so we can access it through the software. So telemetry device can communicate one of two ways. It can communicate either through radio or through cellular. And so I've actually put a picture in the bottom right-hand corner here. Our telemetry unit is called C3, and it also functions as both the radio and a cell unit. And we'll start talking about the differences between those two. So usually after I start describing what telemetry means, usually the follow-up question most people have is, well, what's the difference between radio and cellular? So typically radios in this space are operating in the 900 megahertz frequency, and they communicate in the network. So you would set up a local network on your farm or on your ranch with these radios, so that way they all communicate together. And then cell, so the inverse of that is you would actually, instead of using a radio antenna, you would just connect a cell antenna to a C3, and then it just starts communicating with the local cell towers in your area.
So Connor, we have a question from the audience, and I just want to remind everybody I've got both the chat and the Q&A open. So if you have questions for Connor as we go along, go ahead and type them in there, and when appropriate, I'll get them to Connor. But the first question we have is, well, what about repeaters? Now, where do repeaters fit in with gateways and nodes?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll answer that question because it'll actually flow very nicely as we go through these next terms. So when we're thinking about radio networks and we're thinking about radios as telemetry devices, we have three different terms that come to mind. So gateways, nodes, and then repeaters. So with the gateway is basically the main hub or the mothership, main station, whatever you want to call it. And this is the device that collects all the data from the surrounding radios and then pumps it up into the cloud. So the next term, node, talks about all those radios that are communicating to the gateway. Typically, this is a term used for a device that is just operating under radio and is relaying the data back to the gateway. And then in some cases, when we want to extend that radio signal a little bit further, the nice thing about the C3 is it can not only act as the cellular, it can act as the gateway, the node, but it can also act as this repeater too. And so it would actually extend that node signal even farther by then relaying the signal to the node, then back to the gateway. So that's why they call it a repeater.
Okay.
So, it'd probably be helpful if we had a couple of examples now, so that way we can visualize better the difference between these two communications. So I've created a couple examples. So let's first talk about radio. So if you see in this example here, I just took that same cartoon that we had on our title screen here, and I went ahead and I illustrated how the data flows in a radio network. So we want to make sure that when we're thinking about where to place our gateway, we want to place our gateway in a location that is protected and has good, reliable cell reception. And this will be important in a second. And then each of the nodes can be sprinkled out in the fields wherever we need them. So in this example, we have some controlling valves. We have one out in the orchard doing probably soil moisture monitoring and pressure monitoring. And so all of that data being collected and all those commands being sent to those valves has to come to the gateway before it has access to the cloud. And so all the nodes are all working together in a cohesive unit. So this is really nice in areas where we have marginal cell reception, because we can reach past the limits of that cell reception with the radios and then also the repeaters. And also it's nice from a pricing standpoint, because your annual subscription is going to be a little bit less because you then have access to our tiered pricing, which is, determined upon the number of radios that you have deployed. The downside, though, the downside to radios is that they're a bit finicky, and the fact that they have to talk to each other. They're all interconnected. So if, let's say, this unit out in the orchard gets knocked over by the tractor and goes offline, there is potential that it could affect the communications of the other units in the system, because they're all interconnected. So you do run the risk of not having consistent and reliable communications with radios. We do make it work, and we've been doing it all over the valley, all up and down the Western United States. It works fine. There's just, risk management is all. So then moving on to cell, you're going to notice that the arrows in this picture look a little bit different, right? And so opposite of a radio network, instead of everything coming back to a single point, we now can think of every C3 device that's deployed as its own single point. With cell, every single C3 has access to uploading data to the cloud. So we don't have to worry about if one device goes down, if it's going to affect the communications of the other. We know that if, let's say, this one out in the orchard right here were to go down, all the rest of the valves wouldn't be affected. This gateway or this unit at the farm shop wouldn't be affected. So from a data consistency and a data reliability standpoint, that's really good. But the downside is that it typically costs a little bit more annually to have a cell service for each site. But you can think of the trade-off as Well, I'm basically paying insurance knowing that I'm going to have consistent data coming out of my systems instead of running the risk of something going down.
Yeah, Connor, I think also too, the setting up, the setup for radio, is that harder than just setting up each C3 as a gateway?
No, we've been doing this for decades now, and we've been doing this consistently and really well in multiple farm settings. So it's not any more difficult than setting up a cell system. It's just, you have the pros and the cons of each system is all. And whether you're using cell or whether you're using radio, you still have access to the same list of features in the Jain Logic software, and you still have the same capabilities. It's just a different means to an end is all.
Yeah, and then just to make sure I'm clear, I think I can use a C3 as a gateway or a node. It's just however I want to set it up.
Exactly. Yes. You're just altering the way that it's communicating, the way that it's talking is all.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And so just like the device has the flexibility in its communications, it also has the flexibility in its functionality as well. So in this example here, on the left-hand side, I have a C3 that is doing control. And then on the right-hand side, I have a C3 that's doing monitoring. And the point that I'm trying to drive home here is that it doesn't matter what it's doing. All the functionality that the C3 needs is built in, and it's ready on board and ready when you are. On top of that too, you'll notice that there's a number of black ports on the front face of the C3. So this is important when we're thinking about planning and thinking about how to implement this. We can hook up a number of different devices and sensors to each C3. So this is really important from a planning, efficiency, and a cost standpoint, because we can get a lot of functionality out of every single site where we're deploying these. So now that we understand a little bit of the terminology, we understand the difference between radio. We understand that we can connect multiple devices and multiple sensors to a C3. Let's think about where to begin. I like to go back to the fundamentals, and I like to think through, what was that original reason that got us to start thinking about using some of this technology on the farm and using this type of technology on the farm? Was it we wanted to try to cut back on over irrigating or ensuring that we weren't over irrigating? Were we wanting to collect data on our flow meters at remote sites? Were we trying to, cut back on overtime hours by having the pump automated? What are some of those, base reasons why we were trying to do some of this? And then once we have that, we can then start building out our game plan of where each of these devices is going to be deployed. We just talked about making sure that we're putting these devices where they're going to be able to have the most functionality possible. So in this example right here, I have a filter station labeled, and we're going to put it at a filter station and we're going to do automation. Why not hook up the flow meter? Why not put a couple of pressure sensors in a weather station out there? The C3 has the capacity to handle all that, and we're getting more value out of it. We have a lot of people that come and tell us about other solutions that they may have tried or other companies that they've been approached by. And a lot of people in the space have been sold on these various solutions that are more like a ready, fire, aim approach. And what I'm trying to bring forth today to have us start thinking about, and also what Jain is all about, is, the ready, aim, fire. We think about the various types of equipment that we would purchase and ensuring that whatever type of tractor or piece of equipment that we're going to be buying is going to do and provide us the most value on the farm, that it's going to have the most functionality. Because bottom line, the only reason that we should be adopting this technology is to save money, whether that's saving money on operation costs, cutting back on our inputs, or optimizing our yield. So we should think in the same frame of mind with this technology as we do purchasing any other type of equipment. So once we've started to think about the reasons why we're doing this, I think it would be beneficial if we start thinking through, what are the benefits from each type of category? What are the benefits of monitoring only? What are the benefits of just doing automation? And then, combined, what kind of benefits can we see from having them both? So let's go ahead and start with the monitoring category. So I've listed off a couple of functionalities so far, but our devices have a whole slew of functionalities and capabilities that we bring to the table. And it's forged from multiple decades of growers telling us what's crucial in a monitoring solution. So if we want to monitor pressures out in the field to track our irrigation events, field specific, if we want to monitor soil moisture, if we want to monitor tank levels or reservoir levels, that's what's pictured right here is we actually have a C3 monitoring the reservoir levels. So that way the grower knows exactly what his capacity is, how much he can work with from the reservoir versus using his groundwater. And, this is to kind of drive the point home. I was actually working with a grower just recently, and he wanted to know what his water consumption was for a field specifically. And so I took him into Jain Logic and I showed him that we had the report function and it had all the information he was looking for exactly. It told him exactly how much water was consumed by a specific field. And he was so excited because he didn't have to go back and try to back calculate this. And knowing that it was there and that it will be there going forward really gave him peace of mind. And he was able to move on to the next task because he could just download that information and then send it to the appropriate agency as needed.
Yeah, so Connor, that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. And there's got to be a wide variety of reasons why growers would want to use automation or technology, right?
Right.
Are you starting to see some patterns of reasons why, somebody would want to use technology?
Yeah, the nice part about being a leader in the industry is, we really do have a wide range of users amongst our customer base. And so we get to see a lot of different situations. And so we have some people that are looking, to make sure that they're irrigating efficiently. We have other people that are using this to make sure that they're applying their irrigation efficiently through automation. And then we have some guys who are monitoring remote locations, flow meters at remote ranches. So if their guys don't have to go out there and record a meter reading and spend that time in drive time and work time, then that's a benefit and that's paying for itself right there.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Connor. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so now that we've looked at monitoring, we can also look at the other side here and we can think about automation. So when we're thinking about management, we're thinking about efficiency. The Irrigation Association actually defines irrigation efficiency being affected by two factors. One is distribution uniformity, and then the second is irrigation scheduling. So the nice part about using technology for automation is that we can be very precise in our irrigation schedules being applied because it's the device that's running it. So whether that's at the pumps or it's at the valves, we can be very selective and be very precise with how our irrigation is applied. So that's exactly what's pictured here. We have a C3 connected to a couple of valves. And so this grower is now not only able to turn the pump on and off, but while the pump's running, he can then rotate his various irrigation sets in the surrounding fields. So, excuse me. So in a sense, we actually are increasing our overall efficiency by being very precise with our schedule application.
That's great. Now, Connor, looking at this photo, can you tell, is that set up as a gateway or a node?
Yeah, I can tell that it's set up as actually as a cell because it doesn't have a very large antenna on it. There's nothing on there that you would say, that's an antenna. To the untrained eye, you can't really tell, but on the top of that enclosure there's a very tiny black little nub, and that's a cell antenna. So that's how you can tell the difference between the communication type of a C3 is if there's a large antenna on the top of the mast, that's a cell, or excuse me, that's a radio. And then if the antenna is not very noticeable, or if it's very small like that, it's a cell application.
Yeah. And Connor, we've got a question here about data ownership, right? There's a lot of information coming in from all these devices. Right. Can the grower just say, I only want this information, this data for me, and I want to keep it confidential?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the information is not shared to any third parties or anything like that. If somebody's concerned, all the data is brought back to the software, and we're the only ones and the customer that has access to that software. So if they would like to download the data coming off of a sensor set and send it to somebody, that's completely up to their choice.
Yeah. And then this data is there for them for years and years, right? To
Yep.
use to their benefit from their experience.
Yes, correct. Yeah, yeah. So, that's another great point to bring up. Thinking about value and thinking about the benefits of monitoring is that you're building this database, and you're not only building this database that you can use for reporting, but you're also building this database, a local database for your practices that you've employed. And you can use this. We talked about this the last time I was on, as your report card to work from, to say, how did I do? What can I do different going forward? Or how do I want to see changes in the data to reflect the changes that I want to apply this coming season?
Yeah. And Connor, unfortunately, a lot of rural areas don't have great cell coverage.
Right.
What do you do ahead of time to make sure that the cellular connection is going to work and that they have good integrity, right, of data
Right.
because of the cell signal?
Right. Right. So, going back, thinking about radios, as we talked about already, that's when radios really start to shine, is when you have in some of these rural areas where the cell signal can be sketchy. And we've even seen that in rural areas, the cell towers, the cell providers will actually shift the signal away to more populated areas in times of high demand. So that's when it's really nice to have a radio system. So then that way you cut down on the number of cellular communications at that location. And so, to answer the question a little bit further here too, when I'm talking to most people, they know, they know if an area has bad cell reception or not. It's usually one of the first things that's brought up when we start talking about what components we're going to put in the system. And if not, we're very hands-on. All of us that work here at Jain, we're all very hands-on. We go out to the field frequently, and we can figure these things out whether or not we have a cell signal on our phone.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Connor.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah. And then the last point I wanted to hit on here with the benefits of automation is I actually just finished up a project up in the North Valley where we took this a step further too, where the grower actually had some fertigation pumps on site, and we were able to wire that into the same C3 at the pump panel. And this also gave him the capability and the flexibility of doing precision application of his chemical injection into his irrigation system. And then we're also in the process of integrating into Danfoss VFD panels as well. So we'll be able to take that the next step too. Instead of just turning the VFD on and off, we'll actually be able to remotely edit those set points on the VFD, as well as monitor various parameters of the VFD, so we can identify any issues well in advance. So now that we've looked at both automation and monitoring separately, let's think about it working together. And, literally you're getting the benefits of both monitoring and automation at that point. But also, from a value standpoint, you're getting the most value out of the investment that you're making by putting a device at a location, as well as getting the most value out of the Jain Logic software. The Jain Logic software has tons of capabilities, and we can really start, when we're using both monitoring and automation, we can really start to think of it as a system and as a cycle. We have the data being collected, the data is being analyzed by the system, we're analyzing it by looking through it, and then we're also getting some forecasts coming out of the system as well. And then once we have this information, we can make a decision on that right away by creating an irrigation schedule and then having that set to run at a future date. So then we've created this cycle that fits in with the rest of our farm operations in the way that we're already operating. So this is really important because, some people do monitoring really well, some people do automation really well, but with the Jain platform, it's a one-stop shop. You're getting it all in one platform.
Yeah, that's super valuable, right? No finger pointing, everyone on the same page and working together.
Right.
Sounds like a huge undertaking, though. Is it a big challenge?
No, no, that's kind of the misconception, is that it's this really big challenge. But from an automation side, it's as simple as putting a relay into the pump panel and wiring it into our C3 device, and then you've got automation. If you want a soil moisture probe, we put a C3 out in the field and auger a hole in the ground, and then you're reading soil moisture data and in-field pressure. So it's it's designed to be very simplistic and easy to use, because we understand that people are on the go and they can't sit down and go through a ton of data. So there's high levels of looking at the data, and then there's also the ability to do some deep dive into the data. So yeah, it's very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that we've thought through the terms, we've thought through the benefits, we've gone back to what we're trying to do. The next step in the process is to draw up a plan. And so, you can do this on the back of a napkin. You can, have an irrigation design or a CAD drawing with some notes, just something to get your thoughts down on paper and start working with your account manager or your Jain representative for what devices you think you need and what capabilities you're trying to access. So the screenshot that I have on the screen here is actually just from Google Earth. Google Earth is a free program that you can download straight off of the internet, and it's super powerful. And so that's how I created this design here. And then you also notice that that there's a bunch of yellow squiggly lines going through here, and that's actually a free map layer that the USDA has provided, showing the different soil types. So all from one spot, I can really get a lot of information and really make some really smart decisions without having to do too much work. This took me less than 5 minutes to create. So I highlighted the borders of my field, so that way we knew exactly what fields to be working with. And then I started using icons to notate what devices and locations I was going to deploy. So starting from the top here, I wanted to wire up my pump, and I wanted to add some monitoring at my filter station. So we'll wire in a flow meter and a couple of pressure sensors to look at the differentials at my tanks. And then I have 8 valves along the western edge of this field right here. So the C3 can handle up to 4 valves. And so I made sure to place those C3s so that way they were equidistant from all the valves. So that way I could, do minimal wiring and minimal trenching to those C3 locations. And then based on the soil type out in the field, I placed a field station out there where I have 2 probes. So I made sure to place it right on the border of those soil changes. So I can get a probe in each soil type and connect it to a single C3. And the nice thing is I still got capacity. So why not throw a weather station on there too? So I can do some weather monitoring, track my growing degree days, look how many chill hours I accumulate during the winter time, and then also, alert on frost conditions.
Wow, talk about a lot of data coming in and a lot of ability. Boy, I can see the labor savings here very easily, and it's not too hard to imagine maybe the yield improvements I'm going to receive as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, this gets it down on paper. So it's also a great confirmation for us too to work from, to say, am I achieving that goal that I'd set for myself? We want to make sure that we're setting goals and that we're able to achieve it instead of just throwing a bunch of devices out there. We want to be very surgical.
And Connor, we have another question, and it's kind of a clarification now. We get data from all these devices, but we can also we can be alerted to issues too. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is correct. So any device that is connected to a C3, we can set an alert off of. So high pressure, frost alerts, malfunction, soil moisture levels, we can set an alert.
Yeah. And so when you say set an alert, that's going to alert me, the grower, the water manager, that there's an issue. And how does that all happen?
Yeah, it's as simple as putting in somebody's phone number into the application. It's if somebody doesn't have access to the Jain Logic software, they can still receive alerts, which I think is a huge value, because you don't have to train somebody up on using the software. You can just have them receive alerts when there's an issue. So this is great for irrigation foremen during frost season, or for our citrus guys who need to be alerted on cold conditions during the later parts of the year.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. And so once we have our plan drawn up, this gives us our parts list. And then we then take our parts list to our Jain representative and we place the order. We got a real talented field staff at Jain, and we're able to accommodate and achieve all the goals that our growers are setting out to reach. And then we, working with Jain too, we also have a very extensive dealer network. So if there's something that might be beyond our skill set, we can always bring in one of our dealers in your area and have them help us to achieve whatever goal you have set. And so each one of these pictures here is not just a marketing image, and they're not just set up to look pretty. These are actually functioning and live Jain users from all across the globe, actually. And so I like this picture on the right. I added it specifically was it's really driving home the point that we're talking about here today, is making sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck and putting as much as we can. And they had so much functionality at the site that we actually added a second C3 to make sure that we could get everything that we wanted to do at this one location done. So you can see all the wires and conduits running up to these two C3s. We're doing pump control, booster control, monitoring pressures, flow meter, monitoring tank levels, and we even got a weather station up top there. So there's a lot going on, and so they're really getting a lot of value out of this one location.
Well, that's for sure. That's really great. Now, we had another question that came in, Connor, and it just talks about maybe reporting information to the water agencies. So this is becoming a bigger thing in California, that's for sure. Can we use these systems to do that?
Yeah, exactly. Just like the example I talked about earlier, that is the benefit of connecting up your flow meter and then having pressure sensors at the filter station and having pressure sensors out in the fields. Because a lot of times we have our pumps and our filter stations feeding multiple fields. So we can track how much water, if we're pulling it from the ground, we can track how much water we're pumping through that site. And then we can also, look at how much water we're putting on each field specifically. All that data is captured and already formulated into a report in the system that you can download. You can either email it, you can download it into a CSV file, Excel, or you can download it into a Word file. So you can keep it as a record, or you can then very easily attach it to an email and send it out to your water agency at that point.
Yeah, excellent. That's a lot easier than driving out and writing stuff down every day, right?
That's right. Or digging through handwritten records and trying to do all the calculations yourself. So, if you're looking at all this and you're thinking, man, I've been looking at doing some of this technology, and Connor, I would really like to benefit from having this type of data on my farm, but I'm just worried that I might not have the time available to commit to it. We are launching this water management service this year to 10 growers. And that's basically what we would do. We would come alongside you just like any of your other consultants or farm managers, and we would help to delegate that work. We would be your data and your irrigation consultant at that point. So we've really only got a couple of spots left. So if you're seriously considering this, contact me or any one of our wonderful account managers, David Lindsay, Steven Soares, or even Jeff Toole, and let them know that you want to be a part of this, because time is running out. So make sure to jump on it.
Yeah, that's great, Connor. And one thing I just wanted to say about this is I can't think of an instance where, because I really think if I get this water management service, I'm going to learn more about the technology. I'm going to learn more about the software, and eventually I'm going to be running it. And I can't think of an instance where I have taken a lesson or did some education with somebody else helping me along that the speed at which I learned was increased dramatically. And that's what I love so much about the water management services program, is that I'm going to learn to be a better water manager in just a much faster time period.
Right. And then the data also doesn't seem so intimidating too. Once you sit down with your account manager and you're looking through the reports that we provide to you weekly, it takes away, some of that fear or some of that, overwhelming feeling by looking at the data, because it's broken down and you start to learn exactly like you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. That's great. I'm excited about this.
Good. Yeah, we are too. We're really excited. We've got a number of growers already signed up, and we're excited to reach that number 10 and to walk together with them through this 2021 season. And so if you're thinking, well, Connor, this all sounds really nice, but can I trust you? I just wanted to throw some statistics up here to back up a lot of the claims that I've been making today. And we have really, really talented staff, and you can trust working with any of our account managers, whether you're just wanting to use the Jain logic system, you're an existing user, or if you want to take part of this water management service. Jain is tried and true, and we're here to stay. And unfortunately, not a lot of companies in this space can say that. We're a global company. We're backed by $1 billion in global revenue. And we talked about a lot of the things that we're bringing to the table with this side of an offering. And if you were to try to go and achieve this same level of functionality and value anywhere else, you'd have to be going to multiple sources to do that. And that's likely going to result in higher startup costs and most likely more subscription fees in the end. So, again, I just want to hit on the point that we're a one-stop shop, and we're a solid and safe bet if you're looking to start working with some of this technology and working with some of these tools.
That's a great point, Connor, because I don't want to buy something, learn it, and then have to learn something else because because something changed with the company I bought it from. So really a great point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. So if anybody has any questions, in conclusion here, if you have any questions, or, maybe you've already started this design process and started this thinking process, reach out to any one of us and we'll be happy to talk through your thoughts, brainstorm with you, and help with the design process. And then we can also help with the deployment. So hope to hear from any of you soon. And, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, Connor, great job. My initial goal was to learn the difference between gateways and nodes. And boy, I did that early. Plus, I got a lot more out of this. So thank you so much for doing this. For all of you that joined this afternoon, thank you for checking in. Please remember that all of our trainings are on the janesusa.com website under trainings. We also have these as podcasts as well. So if you go to Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, you can find us there too. If you want to just listen around during your day, join us that way as well. So again, thank you, Connor. Friday, we've got Charles Fishman. He's going to be talking about his book, The Big Thirst. It's been almost 10 years to the day since that book has been published. And we have a rare and unique opportunity to talk to Charles and say, boy, you had a lot to say 10 years ago. What happened? What turned out the way you expected it? What changed and didn't work out so well? So really looking forward to that on Friday. So please sign up for that if you're interested. Okay, thanks again, Connor. And thanks again to all of you. We'll see you Friday.
Thank you. Have a great day.